Welcome everybody back to another Dragon video with Gal Chris, and today we're going to be going over the state of yellow going into set 16. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all that fun stuff, blah, 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 blah. Get right to the video. So, first thing, before we go into the yellow leaders, we're going to give a moment of silence for a higher dragon, Gohan. Alright, that's enough, because honestly, this leader was broken and needed to go anyways, right? So, yellow's still in a very good spot, even though the best leader in the game is just the most generically good leader in the game, in the meta, I should say, right now, is gone. It's not banned, but errated, and to a point where, if you're playing it for the memes. You're not really playing it to be a high competitive deck. Doesn't matter how good of a deck builder you are. Paying one now to draw a card and play a one drop is just really, really bad compared to what the leader used to do, right? Now, there are some other yellow options. Of course, yellow is still, I think, in a very good spot, right? Something else that, you know, did get kind of nerfed into the ground a little bit is Power of Super Saiyan. And with Power Super Saiyan down to 1, I'm going to keep saying this until, I guess, a yellow deck wins a huge event, which probably will happen pretty soon, so I won't be saying this too much longer. But yellow without 4 Power of Super Saiyan is... it's not nearly as good as it used to be. Now instead of keeping energy up, yes, you're using Black Kamehameha, that's great. But you don't have that freedom that you had in Gohan, right? Gohan, you had 0 archetype. You ran 4 skillless cards, and really not everything else was just good yellow cards, right? Now you have these other yellow decks, especially some that we're going to go over today, that are very, very good leaders, but they all have archetypes that they have to run. So you can't just fit every good yellow card in the game in these decks. Now you have to run your archetype, whether it's 15, 12, 20 cards, and you have to fit these other good cards in there. And spacing then is going to become a problem. And consistency is going to become a problem. So just wanted to kind of point that out before we go into the actual decks. Now the first set here we're going to go over is obviously the meta decks going into next set. Sin, Set 1, Golden Frieza, and Hellku are probably the best options right now going into yellow decks. Preferably, I think the best out of these 3 is going to be Sin. I think Sin is going to be the most popular yellow deck, not including the new, the 2 new ones. But I think for the Gamer Fest, I think for probably the the regionals that we're going to have here in about 2 weeks, probably a lot of, in-store. I mean, I know there's the one in Kentucky, the regional. So I think Sin's going to be probably the most popular yellow deck, maybe even the most popular deck going into a lot of these events, outside of a few other decks. But like at least in yellow, Sin's going to be the most popular leader. And especially like the Band of Fu makes this leader even better, because now your turn 6 is probably the best turn 6 in the entire game. Like a lot of decks, you still had food that you can do in the, depending on what you had on board. There's a lot of X factors there. But Sin being able to tap 6 and play out, 6 or 7, dragons is insane, right? Kind of going down maybe just a tier is going to be Golden Frieza. And I would say the reason why Golden Frieza goes down a little bit down is because Golden Frieza does not have an early, self-awakening condition, right? And you have the Master Roshi that you can play to take life. You have the 1-drops that, you use to take life. And a lot of those are good, but not amazing. And I don't think a lot of Golden Frieza players are going to be playing anything other than the Master Roshi. And if you don't see your Master Roshi, or your Master Roshi gets removed, now you're sitting in a weird spot, and depending on the deck, they're going to try to OTK you, right? And it is very difficult to do that because this deck does draw a lot, but it is possible. Another thing, and this is more of a side deck topic, is Golden Frieza suffers from one really, really big thing, and that is that it has the same sort of condition that Soul Striker does. So when you are side decking against Soul Striker, a lot of those 1-drops that stop, restanding of energy, you can use those same 1-drops against Golden Frieza. So every color in the game except for black has those. That makes it very easy to side deck against, because you're already side decking against Soul Striker. So now you can just side these in as well, just to go against Golden Frieza. And Hellku, I've always had a mixed relationship with Hellku. I played against way too much Hellku at my locals. It's been a thing, unfortunately. And the deck is decent, right? I think without Power of Super Saiyan, I definitely think this deck hurts. But also, this is a deck that suffers from the I have an archetype I have to build around, right? Granted, they have one of the best mid-range cards, I think, in yellow in general, which is going to be the 4-drop SS4 Brawler. It's a Fleck Double Strike that kills something in rest mode. That's very, very powerful, right? This deck does rely on a Unison, so if you can remove the Unison, you can kind of slow the deck down a little bit. But it is a power pusher. I definitely think this leader should be explored in this format now that Icarus is gone. Because I think everything else is at a level playing field. Even the 2 new yellow leaders, I think, are at a level playing field. I think everything's pretty close. It's kind of like this weird slope effect, where right at the top of the slope is Sin, and everything else just kind of fades around it. So everything's kind of on that same level. Sin's just a tad bit better than every other yellow deck in the format. So obviously, first we're gonna go over Sin. As always, you can always stop the video, check out these deck lists if you want a more of a breakdown and look at them in general. I'm just gonna kind of go an overview over the deck. This is probably a similar list to what a lot of people will be running at the Gamer Fest. Maybe with some small changes. Maybe they're not running 3 black Kamehameha. Let me get my little pointer out here. Yeah, maybe they're not running 3 black Kamehameha. Maybe they're not running the the Oceanus and the Black Sin, which I do think are incredibly powerful cards that should be explored in this deck. Because if you guys don't know, I'm a huge Xeno Sin fan, and these 2 I think are 2 of the best cards in the entire game for black. And you can play them in this deck. They just slot right in because they're Sin cards. There's a lot of cards that say, if you look at the leader here, add up to 1 Shadow Dragon. These are Shadow Dragons. Ta-da! It works pretty well, right? So they're pretty cool effects there, right? This is kind of a heavy one. Obviously, you're running a lot of extra cards here, and there's probably people who also run Robotic Riposte. You can fit in here as well. Secret Rare slot is completely open to either this. This is probably the best one just because you can get it back off your leader effect. You have Sin. You have the other Xeno Sin. You have Xeno Cell. You have Kai. You can run as well. You can have Pan. There's a bunch of different combinations for this deck, and that just kind of comes with the player. Who wants to do what, and that's where you can put your little splash of spice on it. Next one's gonna be Golden Frieza, and again, this leader suffers from having so many archetype cards here, right? You have all these 1-drops you have to run right here, right? You have Frieza's Call, which essentially is a dead card after you use these. Right now, it's always almost guaranteed to draw you a card. But these cards now become your best friend and your worst enemy, because if your opponent removes these and you can't restand energy, it just becomes a little awkward, right? This just has a ton of, just look at all these 1 and 2 ofs right down here. These are all just really good yellow cards here. And this deck fortunately can run one of the best yellow cards I think printed ever as a boss monster, which is Divine Presence. This card here also counts as it also has a freeze army, so you can pop it. But being able to just have a card that cannot be removed unless its power level is reduced to 0, and that's when your opponent counters, you put 2 things in rest mode, you keep them in rest mode. It's a very powerful card, and going forward in the format, I think this leader may drop off a little bit in power, because I think a lot of people are going to be playing one of the newer leaders in the set, because I do think it has a little bit of a better effect on defense than the Golden Frieza does. And then Hellku is the last meta leader here. I think this is a pretty really good deck here. I think this is probably the main concept of what this list will run. And the one problem, again, you don't have other slots for other stuff, right? Like you can take out the Slug package and run Turles, and that's really it. Like you don't really have a lot of other room for stuff. Like you can run Black Kamehameha. You can take out, like, what are you going to take out, right? You can't take out any of your archetype cards, because then you're cutting into how your leader actually functions. And then you don't want to cut into, any of the other extra cards, because this card's super needed, this card's super needed, this is your, like a secret rare here. So you have all these cards, and the deck fits very, very well together. But when you go to adding new cards, that's when the ratios kind of get a little weird. So that's where any Hellku players out there are going to have to kind of figure that out. Shout out to Navarro. This is his deck. Pretty close to what his deck is right now. So, and he pilots the deck very well, and I think there's a lot of people who should attempt to play this leader. But if you can't figure, if you want to play better yellow cards, there are better yellow decks that you can play. But like I said, this archetype itself is very solid. You just can't really fit too much more stuff into the deck. Now we're going to go into the 2 new leaders coming out in the set, which are going to be Vegeta Trunks and Goku Black Wish. These 2 leaders, I think, are incredibly powerful for what they both do. Goku Black finally gives us an Aegis deck. And that is very scary to say from someone who played Mecha Frieza and Icarus for almost an entire year when those cards came out, right? Blue-yellow is probably the most powerful color combination in the game. And then also this is a Saiyan leader. So it gets really, really insane of what this leader can actually do. But first, we're going to go over Vegeta Trunks and kind of go over that. Actually, no, we're not. Sorry, I actually mixed up the templates here. So we're actually going to go through the Goku Blacklist first. If you watched my my deck breakdowns of these two decks, you've already seen these lists. So if you've already seen them, you can kind of skip past them if you want. But overall, I do think this deck is incredibly powerful. This is an incredibly good control deck that implements a lot of the good blue stuff, as well as just being able to use all of the good yellow stuff and all the blue yellow stuff, right? Having a deck that has built-in Aegis as well as indestructible cards, it's incredibly powerful and seamlessly impossible to kill. The idea of this deck is you build up these gigantic boss monster defensive cards, and you know, eventually kill them throughout resourcing them, right? You have tons of way of tapping your opponent's energy, tapping your opponent's battle cards, as well as using something like Kefla, which as one of your big boss monsters, it becomes almost too much for other decks to deal with, especially if you're not built to go turn 5, turn 6. If you can't kill them by the time they establish one of their big boss monsters, you are in trouble. And you're going to feel it. This deck also draws a lot, cycles through a lot, and one thing you do have to worry about is decking yourself out, because you will draw a ton of cards with this deck. Now, we'll go into the Vegeta Trunks leader. And again, you guys have already seen this list. I do think there is a world where this leader does not have to use a unison, just because it does what it needs to so well with the early game energy. You may not even want to use that for a unison. If you do use a unison, you'll probably end up using 3-drop Trunks, possibly Mechikabura, just for that late game little bump of curve, just because your late game does get a little awkward when you're trying to play stuff out. But the deck does have a lot of options, and the one big thing about this deck is this deck draws a ton of cards, probably just as much as Icarus in the long state of things. On its awakened turn, not so much, because Icarus can draw like what 5 or 6 cards on its awakened turn, or used to be able to draw them, you know, on its awakened turn. This deck, not so much, but the long set of the game, you are getting more value. I feel like being able to evolve of X evolve targets. Most of your X evolve targets also draw you a card, right? And having a built-in 10k double strike Champa essentially on your leader swing is just phenomenal. Even on defense, being able to get 10k for free is incredibly powerful. Also having a very, very powerful boss monster in the Vegeta Trunks that is crit. Also being able to pop battle cards in battle is really powerful too. So your opponent goes in, they don't negate this card's skill. You just activate battle, pitch 2 cards, kill it, and then I think you draw a card too, which is even more broken. So now. Last but not least, we're going to go over some of the cards that I do think you guys should look out for and possibly pick up, either foil play sets or just pick up these cards in general, because these cards are going to be very, very good staples, I think, for sets going forward. So here we have Sun Goku facing Goku Black. We have Super Saiyan Rose Goku Black future on the line, and Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta future on the line. I try not to pick SRs when I'm doing this. However, I picked this SR here because of 2 specific reasons. One, this is generically good yellow card. Leader is yellow, right? I'd say 1.5 then. Another reason is the fact that this card also counts as blue, which is hilarious, right? That's a very weird permanent to write on a card. This card is also treated as blue. This is the first time I think we've had a card like this printed for anything other than black, right? With like the Dark Broly stuff that's considered red as well. If your leader is yellow when this card is played, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, one of your opponent's non-leader cards, and switch it to rest mode. So that's unison, energy, or battle cards. Especially energy, like it's very, very powerful, right? Add your main, send this card to the owner's warp, draw a card, and choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode and KO it. This is also very good. 15k body that you can, after you swing with it and use it, you can warp it, draw a card, and KO something. It's pretty good, right? Activate battle. If you have 2 or more blue and or yellow cards in your battle area and or combo area, play this card from your hand or warp. Like that's incredible. Black decks, you don't care if this card gets warped from your hand or gets warped from your board, whatever, because then you can just play it out for 2 energy and you're not losing any value. Because you don't actually have to combo cards away. It's cards in battle area too. So you can swing with your leader, have 2 battle cards in play, and just activate battle, play it from your drop. From your warp, right? And then tap something. And that can trigger your Poutines. That can trigger your Bergamos. That's insane. And then you keep it on board. If it goes away, great. Then next turn you have another you know, 2 energy play. Like, you always have this available to play. The last reason is that this is an SR, and there's no SPR prints for this card in the set, meaning that this card, if it does become very good, becomes meta defining even, this card's gonna be very, very expensive because there's no other print of this card. Example, Frieza Divine Transformation, same thing. The card was like $2 or $3 for a while. I had like, say like 6 or 7 of those cards. You know, either I pooled or I bought, and currently, I didn't sell them for this, but currently they're selling for like $20, $22 at the making of this video. That's insane, right? It's just because of how defining that card was. Granted, it took a few sets, but this card is just good yellow generic, just like that card is. So if you're playing yellow, pick it up. If you pull it from a box, if it's really high value, sell it. Or if not, just hold on to it, because this card can be worth some money, at least in the competitive scene. Son Goku facing Goku Black. This is kind of a weird one-drop card here, but it's search top 5 for a yellow Saiyan with a specific cost of 4 or less, or a one-drop Unison. Now, Hellku does play a one-drop Unison. Sometimes you know, you don't see the Unison, right? This will be grabbed. That also grabs every single card in your Hellku deck, except for Turles if you do run Turles. But also activate main Spirit Boost. You can choose one of your opponent's battle cards that energy costs 2 or less in rest mode and KO it. Your Unison also taps something, right? So you can kill something in rest mode off of this effect, Spirit Boost, tap something, use your leader, or you do the revealing off the top of your deck, play like the 4-drop guy, kills something else in rest mode. It's really good. And in fact, like I said, it's a search out Unison. Now, once we get better 1-drop yellow Unisons, this card will even, just go up in value, because now you're able to search those out, and it just searches out just generic yellow Saiyans. These are also yellow red and yellow blue and yellow green Saiyans. So also if in the future, if we get better archetypes for those 3 multicolor combinations, you also can search those out as well. And then Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta Future on the line. This is an X evolve target. You can evolve over one of the yellow Vegetas, which you do run in the Vegeta Trunks deck. Once card is played using X evolve, switch it to active mode. So you do draw, and you play this card on top of that guy, switches to active mode. The reason why it switches to active mode is the leader, you can play out a Vegeta from your drop area in rest mode, draw a card, and then on top of this, you tap 1, play this, draw another card, and then you switch it to active mode. When this card attacks, it's one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode, ignoring barrier and KO it. So this also has just barrier removal, but also just board removal, right? You can swing into something. Your auto goes into pending, right? That's something that you have to keep in mind. Your auto goes into pending. So then if your opponent blocks with a battle card, let's say 9-drop Sin, I mean, this obviously would have probably been negated at that point, but like, just any battle card, right? Like, you can swing at it, like you can swing, they block with something, you can then choose that card and KO it. Which then just ends the battle. So that way, if your opponent's trying to arrival stuff, they're trying to do things, you can actually just KO stuff. Or if you swing at something and they block with something, then you can just KO something else in rest mode. It's very, very powerful. And the fact that it draws you cards, you're not really losing anything from hand, is very, very good. I definitely think this is a good card to look at. The Goku is also good as well, the 5-drop Goku. But this one's just a little bit better. I don't think Goku actually draws you a card. I think he just KOs something after a Spirit Boost effect, which is still really, really good. But this being able to just be a 1-drop draw 2 essentially in the Vegeta Trunks deck is mind-blowingly good. But that's what I have for you guys today for the yellow deck. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of yellow going into the next set. If you guys are going to be playing yellow, how tired of you guys are playing against yellow like I am. So just make sure you guys, just let me know what you guys think. I'm very excited about this new set. I'm sure as a lot of you are. So thank you guys for watching and supporting, and I'll see you guys in the next video.